famous.
Alright, the recording started. This is an interview of Mr. Thomas, Sean Thomas. We're questioning you about the day where your son disappeared for about 4 hours, over a 4 hour period. So, the first question is, do you remember that day well?
Yes, I do. I was at work, got a phone call to say my son had gone missing. Started to panic, ran out.
So you remember it like very vividly?
Yeah,
it's not
I
like
remember it like it was yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
you know, something like that. It doesn't really leave your mind because for me it was like a very scary point of my life. I've got to say the scariest point of my life, to know that my son had gone missing. So yeah, I remember I was at work, got a phone call, said Ricardo had gone missing, and yeah, I just rushed out of work because my daughter was at her drama place called WAC. So I just rushed out of work, jumped in my car to get across London to find out where my son is.
Okay. So, how was it you were informed? Like, who spoke to you?
I can't remember if it was your mum or the lady at the WAC place.
Maggie.
Yeah, had called me.
Because I know Jasmine had gone to WAC and then Maggie had called Mum.
Yeah, so I think it may have been your mum that actually called me to say that you had gone missing.
What was like the first thing? What was your initial reaction to that? Like, what was the first thing that jumped to mind, and also how did you like react in terms of words to whoever was on the phone, if you can recall that?
I was just panicking. I explained that I'm just gonna get in my car, get over the other side of London, because I was in West London at the time and you guys were in North London. Mm. So I decided, it was just panic.
Panic?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were informed, you said you were at work.
Yeah.
Was there like a specific area of work that you were in?
I was actually in the office at that time, because normally I'm out on the road doing my...
This is your previous job, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. This was my old workplace.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I just went to my boss. I just explained that... Well, I didn't explain. I just said, look, I need to go. Family emergency. My son's gone missing.
And that was your initial reaction,
yeah.
And then...
And yeah, that was it. Ran out of work. Jumped in the car and drove across London as fast as I could.
Okay, so to go back to, you said you were in the office and you were working. So if this event hadn't happened, how would your day, just your average day, how do you think it would have gone?
I would have just finished work. I think that was the day I was actually coming down to see you and Jasmine.
So you were coming down...
I was coming down to see you guys that day anyway. So I was planning to finish work, come down to see you after you'd finished WAC, and that was it.
Okay, and the mode of transportation, you said you drove down here, so you had your own car?
Yeah, I had my car at work.
Was it a work car or like a personal?
No, it was my work car.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright. And so what was going through your mind while travelling? Like, what was your thoughts on the situation?
I was panicking. It was just crazy, you know. It's like my son's gone missing, you know, all kinds of things, you know, start going through your mind, you know. Wasn't good things, because, you know, it's like you've gone missing. It's like you don't know whether, you know, you've just gone off somewhere or somebody's taken you. You know, it's just panic just kicks in, and you know that it was emotional. I was actually coming across London, and I was actually crying and praying.
And that's not something that you often do.
No, it's not. I was actually, crying, praying that you're okay, you know. And, yeah.
And funny enough, all this time, all I was doing was walking.
Yeah, but, unknown to me, you was actually just walking home. And that, for me, it's like I was quite surprised because...
It's not something you'd expect of... Because I believe I was about 8 or 9 at the time as well. So while driving, obviously what's going through your head is a lot of stress. You're freaking out.
Yes.
But what was your plan of action? Like, were you thinking about what you were going to do when you got over this side of London?
Yeah. My initial plan was to get to Jasmine, my daughter, find out what had happened, what had taken place, why you walked off, So
at this time, you had, from what you'd heard, it sounded like I had walked off.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know the full story of what had happened.
That would follow later on.
Yeah. So I just needed to get across here to London.
Speak to Jasmine.
Get Jasmine. Try get her to back home. You know, try and drive around and see if we can see you. You know, it was just panic mode.
Pandemonium. And
yeah,
I
just
because I'm aware that at the time as well, because Chloe was staying with us in this house as well.
Yeah,
her and Sean, her boyfriend at the time, both of them were out as well looking for me, and that obviously everybody was freaking out, running around trying to find me, and obviously in a big city like London, it's quite hard to just think we will find them. It's like a maze.
Yes.
You're looking for like a needle in a haystack essentially.
Exactly.
So that must have stressed you out just thinking about how you guys were gonna find me.
Yeah, because it's just that moment where panic just kicks in and your head is just all over the place. You just don't know what's happened,
So what was it that so going off of do you remember what had been said by Jasmine when you saw her? Like her explanation of the situation?
It was you two had got into an argument on the street and you had walked in front slightly and then she's turned around, and by the time she's turned back around, you had gone. So she panicked and thought you'd probably walked on ahead to go to whack. So that's where she went. She went straight to whack, and that's when alarm bells started to ring that you wasn't there. So alarm bells started to ring, and that's when.
So once you heard that explanation, what was your take on it? Like, what did you think I had done? Because in that situation, it sounds like I had walked off.
Right. I was upset because obviously, with myself and your mum have always explained to you, you two have to stay together when coming home from school, no matter what. I know, and even if you're having an argument, you two should have still stuck together and you shouldn't have walked off.
Well, later on we'll get to my side of the situation, but right now we're discussing, because you heard my side of the situation afterwards when I turned up, but obviously at this point you don't have that information.
I don't have that information,
so you're going off of one side of it.
I mean, to be fair, I wasn't actually thinking about that at that particular time. All I was thinking about is finding you and making sure you were safe. That's all what was going through my mind.
Was there any outcomes that you think might have occurred, like by that point, once you'd arrived? Like, obviously, your plan was try and find me, but like, was there anything that was going through your head that like something might have happened? Was there any
I mean,
situation?
as I was driving across London, it's like all kinds of mad things were going through my mind. Whether somebody's taken you, yeah, and I was just, I was literally crying.
So going off of like stuff like that you told me and Jasmine when we were younger, like obviously don't talk to strangers, don't have that, and you always told us to be careful because obviously we learned this much later in life. We didn't know exactly why you were telling us this stuff. Like, we didn't know the implications of it.
Yeah.
But people would try and persuade kids to come with them.
Exactly.
And then they'd be taken, they'd be kidnapped. So
yeah. But
you were hoping that scenario hadn't gone out there.
Yeah. I just prayed to God that did not happen. You just think, sometimes, it's like, because it had been a little while, apparently, until it wasn't like a case of I got a phone call straight away. It was a case of I probably may have got a phone call maybe
an hour or two
about an hour, probably an hour after you had gone missing.
Like, it'd been realised that I wasn't where I should be.
Exactly. So, you start thinking, you start thinking the worst, but at the same time, you're praying you're safe, You're praying, you're thinking maybe you may have bumped into one of your school friends, and maybe you've walked home with them, or, but at that particular time, all kinds of things are just rushing through your head. So, I don't know, it's just hard. It was just hard at that particular time. So much things are going on. I'm just praying that you're safe, but the main thing was to get over here, get to Jasmine, pinpoint, find out where the argument took place, where you last saw Ricardo. So we can retrace the last steps of you, where you was, and try and...
So where did you go to meet Jasmine? Was it at WAC? Did you go straight
to WAC? So by the time I got to WAC and just about to speak to Jasmine came up to me. She was crying, and she was crying. She was apologising for having an argument with you, and you disappeared. And at that particular moment, we got a call to say you was found.
It was at the moment that you got to Jasmine that you got a call that was found?
Yes. So, yeah, that was the biggest relief of my life, to know you was safe and well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you were at WAC when you got the call?
Yes. I'd just literally gone through the door, just got to Jasmine to find out what had happened, and then we got the call to say you were safe.
So what was the first thing you actually said to Jasmine when you, like, she had explained, she'd gone through that, we had an argument, she assumed that I had walked off, and then, so once she had explained her side of the story, what did you say to her? Because I know a lot's going through your head, but at the same time...
I mean, I explained to her at the time, I goes, no matter what you and Ricardo are going through, if you're having a small disagreement about anything, you do not let your brother out your sight, because obviously she's the oldest. She's supposed to be responsible for you. And yeah, I was upset. I was very upset. But... I just I kept calm, and I explained, because at that point, that's the point where we found out that you were safe. So literally, I just spoke to her, and, I said, doesn't matter what type of arguments you're having, don't ever let your brother out your sight like that ever again.
Because at the time, she was the one who... I mean, even though obviously I had played a part in going off.
Yes.
it wasn't exactly an argument that I recall that is why we split up. It was down to she had walked off in a direction and I separate to where we normally went. So then other things led to us being split up even more. But at this point, obviously, you'd gone through all the hardship of thinking that I'd gone missing, possibly been taken from someone, and then immediately get the biggest relief. Yes. So, like, that's what was going through your head. Just you were 100% relieved.
Oh yeah, to me that was the best feeling in the world, because you know you had been found, and you know, to know that you're safe and well, that was the best feeling in the world to know.
Okay, because alright, so do you recall where I was found?
Apparently, you was found walking towards WAC.
Well, actually, I walked into WAC. I went into WAC and I informed them that I didn't know where my family was. I hadn't seen Jasmine for a few hours and then at that point I'd gone home and then gone to WAC. And I told them I don't know where any of my family is, and the first thing I asked was, where was Maggie? Because Maggie was the person that I was closest to at WAC. And then it turned out that she wasn't there because she was also looking out to try and find me. So then I remember the first thing they said is, okay, we'll call your mum and dad. And when they came back to me and they said, your dad's on his way, similar to you, that was the biggest relief I had ever had. Because all I knew was that at least I was going to see my family. And then the rest of you guys would know I'm safe. But obviously my side of the story and what actually happened is quite different from what you thought had happened and what Jasmine and Mum and everyone had thought had happened that night.
Exactly.
And my side of the situation was obviously a lot different, as I was the one who was suffering through it. But my question here is, what did you think had happened before actually hearing all the details? Because you didn't hear the details until I was questioned from the police what happened. Because I know the police were called as well.
Right.
And I remember I had to explain to them everything that went down. But what did you think had happened that night?
Well...
sorry.
Well, as far as I was aware, you and Jasmine had just had an argument. And you walked off in front of her, and you know, that's the impression I got.
So the impression was that I had walked off because I was angry.
Yeah.
And then I just turned up later on.
Yeah. But I mean,
so you thought I was like wandering around the streets?
No, I mean it was either, I don't know, it's hard to explain, because like I said, my head was all over the place.
I'm sure.
So it's like, it's like I could say, yeah, you've walked off, but at that particular time, it's like going through my head, it's either you could have walked off, or somebody's, started talking to you, you could have gone off with a stranger, all those kind of things. I mean, yeah, it was a bit of a state, so...
But, alright, so out of those, what did you think was the most plausible thing that had happened?
I thought you just walked off and got lost.
Okay.
But and that was it, to begin with. But then, like I said, it's like...
When I actually explained what happened, you thought a lot more.
When I found you and I grabbed you and hugged you, and like...
Actually, about that, when you first saw me, because obviously I know I'm a lot larger than I was. I was a lot smaller.
Little chubby kid.
All I remember is the elevator doors opening, and you were the first thing I saw. I noticed that Jasmine was there after the fact, but the first thing I saw was you. And I'm sure the little man running up to you, just arms wide open, and just covered in tears, just wanted a hug.
Yeah.
That must have been...
Oh, that was the best feeling in the world, just having you there in my arms. Just knowing you're there and you're safe. That was... it was emotional.
It was
very
emotional for me as well.
very big relief and sigh of happiness that you were safe and you didn't come to any harm.
Yeah, because also it was pretty much the same with me, as in that situation, you were the first one of my family I'd seen in a few hours. At least one that I was very happy to see.
Yeah.
Because obviously, me and Jasmine did have a disagreement at this point.
Yeah.
But, were you informed that the police had been called? Or were you...
Yeah, I was informed that the police was called.
Because all I remember is, as soon as I saw you, I was just happy to see you. And then immediately I was taken into a room to explain the situation.
Because I had thought you had been found by the police who were bringing you back. But I didn't realise that you had actually walked all the way to...
I'd been smart enough to get there myself.
And I think it was like just at that time, as I was coming through the doors, that was the time I actually got the phone call. So I didn't even realise you was actually in the building. Yeah. I thought they had just found you and they was bringing you to whack.
So basically you didn't fathom that I would... I mean, for someone who was about the age of 8 or 9...
Yeah.
You don't expect them to... I mean, you don't expect them to be smart enough to make the... I mean, what you would call now is like the common sense decision. Like, as an adult, you get separated from someone. I have a phone now, I have keys to the house.
Yeah.
My immediate action is text or call the person that I've been separated from.
Yeah.
See where they are. If I can't get in contact with them, I go home and I let them know that I've done that.
Yeah.
But at the time, I didn't have a phone, and neither did I have keys. So I recall the police bringing me and you into a room. I remember seeing Jasmine's face as well. She was covered in tears. She obviously, it had been a hard night for her as well. I'm sure you saw that more than me.
Yeah, it was hard for her because, I mean, even though you and your sister always have like your little disagreements and stuff, you know, you can just see the emotion in her face. You know, her little brother had gone missing and she was very emotional. She was probably as emotional as I was, you know. She just wanted her little brother home and safe.
It's quite funny when she always used to want to try to say that she used to want to get rid of me. And then when she actually did the... obviously, that's when the true feelings came out. Yeah.
So it was emotional on all of us. All of us, it was emotional, very emotional.
So while the police were asked me to run through what happened.
Yeah.
So the basic rundown of what happened and what I experienced was me and Jasmine had left school. We had a small argument, but in my mind, at the time that we did it, I remember me, her, my friend Will, and his older brother, we always used to walk in one direction. It was pretty much every single day we would do that. So what happened was we had an argument, but Jasmine that day was with a different friend. And she had walked off in one direction, and I hadn't paid attention. And I hadn't actually moved at that point. I was with my friend Will, and we were just standing. And I remember yelling for her name, just yelling, and I tried to look around for her, could not see her. And immediately at that point, I didn't know where she had gone. And I started to burst into tears at that point. I recall that was where I freaked out. And my initial reaction was, I don't know where Jasmine is. I don't know what's happened to her. But in my head, we were going home. And at the time, there was pretty much always someone in the house. So, like a very smart 9-year-old, I don't even know if Ruby would do this now, if she knows her way home that well. But I just walked home. And then got home, but nobody was there. And unfortunately at the time, as I said, I didn't have keys, nor did I have a phone, so there was no form of contact. There was no way for me getting a house. And I sat there for a while. Nobody came, because at that point everybody was out looking for me, and you guys had all, it was said to you guys that I'd gone missing. And surprisingly, I decided to go to WAC. As far as I knew, that was one of the days that I would typically go WAC, so I thought, why don't I go there? I know that there's a phone there. They can call mum or dad. So I went all the way there. I'm sure I ignored a couple strangers. I recall one time, one person came up to me while I was crying, and I told them to leave me alone because of the lessons you and mum had told me. Basically, do not talk to strangers if you don't know them. So, got to WAC, and all I remember was telling them, can you call my mum and dad? Didn't say anything else, and I just sat there. So I went and I explained that to the police, and I remember through like gasps and tears. And how did you feel in that moment once you heard all of that? That your son, of quite a young age, took the initiative to do that? Because I'm sure before I said that, you weren't expecting that to come out of my mouth of what.
Yeah,
That's what I did.
I know we haven't really talked about it that much in detail after it happened, but to hear you saying it now, it's like, yeah. When I first heard that, I was thinking, wow, what a smart boy. Because I mean, that distance to walk from school to home, that's a long, long journey, and for you to make that on foot at that particular age, I didn't even think you knew your way home from school unless you was on the bus. So, I mean, I would say it was very smart that you knew your way home and you made your way home. But, you know, it was even more, it's like when going from home to WAC. Because I don't know if you ever did that journey before.
I had never actually gone from home to WAC.
Yeah, always from school to WAC. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for me, how did you find your route to get to WAC? How did you know which direction to go?
I mean, now when I think about it, I obviously know the area a lot better because, this happened, 12 years ago now. Because this was before Ruby, so it might have been so about 11.
We're talking about 12 years.
Yeah, 11, 12 years.
Could be 12 up to 13, yeah.
At the time, the only thing I knew was WAC was near school, and I remembered Hampstead Heath Road, the big road that goes up the high street, and all I recalled was going straight down that road, that's where WAC is. So the first thing that went to my head was make my way halfway to school, and once I hit school, or once I hit the road which leads up to school, leads up the high street, instead of turning right to go to Hampstead, turn left, and WAC is on that road, and that's Belsize Park. Obviously I didn't know it by name at the time, and there are other routes I could take which are much faster, but I was just going off a very basic knowledge at the time. That's what I thought about.
Well, I thought you was very smart that you actually used your initiative and did what you did. So yeah, I was just glad you were safe. You managed to make your way to WAC.
Okay, so initially, how were you expecting that night to end? Just as a normal day, how were you expecting that night to end if this hadn't happened?
It was just a case of leaving work, coming to see you and Jasmine, have a meal, chill out, relax, just basically see my kids.
Normal family.
Normal family night.
And then how were you feeling the day was going to end while in the moment? I'm sorry, I know it's a hard question to answer.
To be honest, I didn't know how it was going to.
You were just hoping for a good outcome.
I was just hoping that you were safe. That's all. That's all that was going through my mind, is that you're safe.
All right. So, what precautions did you take to prevent an event like this happening in the future? Because I remember that Jasmine. This was like the last year or two Jasmine being in primary school. So sooner or later, I was gonna have to start taking myself to school. But I can't recall if I had been given keys by them. I know it was soon after that.
Well, it was a case of making sure you're walking home with friends who were coming home in your direction, or your mum was coming to pick you up, or I was coming to pick you up. So it was always a case of making sure you was with somebody else.
Basically, you always have like a chaperone.
Yeah.
Type thing. Okay.
Definitely did not want that happening ever again.
Yeah. It's just like a learning curve for myself as well with my little sister Ruby.
Yeah.
I don't even let her out of my sight. I don't even let her go too far ahead of me now because of stuff like this.
Yeah, it's...
Because you turn 1 second and then you turn back and they're gone, so...
Exactly. So, yeah, after that, gave you and Jasmine a good talking to. And just explained this will never happen. Well, this should not happen again. And yeah, it was after you was found safe, it was a great outcome. And
so, what I'm going to ask you is, in a sentence, just one sentence, how would you describe that day? Because for me, the way I've always described it is the scariest event of my life. I know I've still got a lot of growing to do, and I've still got a lot of time ahead of me, but that's how I would explain it, being in that.
Well, I would say that was and still is the most scariest day I have ever had in my life of 47 years. That was the most scariest day, to know that you'd gone missing. And I would not wish that on anybody. And I wish that, now as you're a big grown person and your sister's a big grown person, I still treat you guys as little kids, because you always will be little to me. So, that was the most scariest day. But the good relief was you was found safe and well, and that was the main important thing.
Okay. Well, thank you for this. It's always good to... Well, for me, it's really good to find and finally talk about your side of the situation, because always before I just didn't want to talk about it.
And it was also good to hear your side of it too, because we never quite sat down and talked about it in details.
Yeah, you had just heard the side which I explained to the police.
It was good to hear it, 12 years later.
But yeah, no, it's always good to... Because I know how I felt in the situation. But I never considered how you or Mum felt, or Jasmine, rather.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, when I was younger, it was just like... How I saw it was, it's Jasmine's fault. I don't want to hear her side of it, because she's the reason that I had that experience. I still believe that it was down to her actions. But I don't have as much anger towards her about it. And to be honest, it was kind of like... It's kind of like a learning curve now for me. It's like... It's something that's taught me now how I need to be very on Ruby, the little sister, so...
Well, one day you'll have kids of your own. And, something like what's happened to you...
Could happen to them.
I mean, you would be prepared, for this. So, you know how to teach them right from wrong. If they're out on the road with somebody they know, they have to stay safe, stay beside them, and do not go off with strangers, or, so that's something. What's happened to your event, what happened to you can
learn from it.
learn from it.
Well, thank you for.
Okay. Thank you, sir.